Chapter 10 Starlight's Legacy. Join in our utopia. Come out of the dark, banded by equality, by our cutie Mark. I was feeling uneasy as Sentry began to lead us away from the crowd, the prophet vanishing among the ponies all bearing the same cutie mark. The same cutie mark. What the hell? I mean, is that even possible? Well, clearly, since these ponies are here, but how? Why? What is this village? I mean, I know the wasteland has some crazy shit in it, but this village is just plain weird, right? And those smiles really do not help. Come right this way. Sentry beckoned as the crowd subsided. You'll find your accommodation to be homely and, well, accommodating. I do hope you get a good amount of rest before tomorrow. You are quite welcoming, Cobalt noted clinically. Surprising if you haven't had any visitors for as long as you claim. Well, we are apart from any pony else, he noted before shooting a look at Stripe. Or anyone else, for that matter. And you are to tell us your tale, are you not? Stripe asked him. I am most curious to hear it. We stopped by a bland and unassuming building at the end of the street, to the right of the prophet's house. A small, disused sign simply read, "Inn," and a few signs of activity could just be made through the grimy windows. Of course, he responded with that same damned grin. But first, here we are. It is a simple residence usually, but spare rooms are available, and by the prophet's grace, you are to have one free of charge. How kind, Stripe stated, but seemed eager to get back on topic. Now, your story? Ah, right. Well, I suppose I could just up and tell you now. Sentry began, sitting on his rump as his creepy smile became almost nostalgic. Our home has existed as it is now, maybe sans the defenses, for over 200 years. And you would find that our origin predates the war that caused this decay. Before the war? Cobalt questioned. How far before? A few years, perhaps. I couldn't say for certain, the pony replied. But we were brought together by one starlight glimmer, a mare of great understanding and vision. She installed in us the virtue by which we live out our lives. Virtue? Equality, Sentry explained, waving a hoof at the village around us. I have told you about the rotation of tasks. It is something we are all expected to contribute to from the moment we can speak. I still don't entirely understand the rotation, Cobalt noted. I could see it as a way to distribute tasks if you were only a few ponies, but you're an entire village. If you had dedicated farmers, they could learn new ways of improving their crops. Dedicated guards could become more observant and better shots. But if we did that, we would no longer be equal, and harmony would be destroyed, Sentry rebutted. By moving around day to day, we stay on our assigned task to the letter with no deviation or innovation. This way, one pony will never outclass the other in any conceivable way, and so harmony is maintained. If Equestria were like this before the war, the end never would have come. By doing the barest minimum, Cobalt refuted with a small frown. It may not be our place to judge, Stripe pointed out. If these little ponies wish to survive this way, that is their decision. Well, she's not wrong, I had to admit. Even if I did agree with Cobalt on its plain strangeness. It is stagnant, Cobalt remarked. Monotonous. Every pony is meant to be exactly the same to the letter? The same cycle, day in and out, with no deviation. No offense, but it sounds almost robotic. Looking around, it did in a way. Those were not happy smiles. And what if any of your ponies did decide they wanted to do something else? I had to ask. There was no way every cult of filly just went along with the same old routine with no end in sight. You know, take a hobby. Decide they want to grow crops over Huntiaugui or want to leave. Why, that's unthinkable, Sentry replied as if I was stupid. No pony wants to leave. But if they did? Was it me, or did that smile take on a darker edge? No pony wants to leave, Sentry simply replied. And our ideals are clear. From birth to death, you follow the path laid out for you. There's no deviating from it. Well, as if the creep factor couldn't rise any further. Besides, the pony continued, our symbol ensures no deviation is possible. A symbol? Cobalt questioned. The mark of equality, Sentry explained, pointing toward his own covered flank. We all have it, given by the prophet the day of our births. It prevents the taint of marks like yours from destroying our equality, and it ensures that any attempts to deviate are futile. How do you mean? I asked, sharing a small look of increasing alarm with my companions. It shows our way, and ensures we stay on the path. It was all laid out by Starlight Glimmer. And what happened to Starlight Glimmer? She guided us through the horrors of the war, Sentry stated. When the Alicorns wished to fight over simple things, our isolation kept us safe. The mines in these mountains were long tapped, so no pony came back. And as the war escalated, we remained unscathed. When the end destroyed all impure civilizations, we endured. And that's when you built the wall? Cobalt asked. To ensure the strays of the wasteland do not interfere, Sentry confirmed. And so our history stretched for 200 years of prosperity and equality passed down to us by the prophet. Stripe hummed. And this ghoul has been here the whole time. Through the staff of sameness she gives the mark, Sentry said, before finally placing a hoof on the inn's doorway. And that is our tale, as the prophet wished for you to hear. Our way has ensured our survival among the destruction. I hope you understand. I'm not sure I do, I told him. Oh? Or not, friend. You will. And then he opened the door and let us inside. Us three really needed to talk. Alone. But we would have to wait until we were in the comfort of our own room for that. The inn was as dull on the inside as it was on the outside, and Sentry quickly led us to an old wooden stairway leading up onto the second floor. There was little decoration of any kind inside, anything to make the home feel lived in by a pony. It was the barest minimum you'd expect a house to be, admittedly cozy, but not really giving the feel of a home. Actually, it kind of felt like how I expected a prison to feel. At the top of the stairs was a landing, several doors lining the corridor. Sentry led us to one of the closest doorways, opening it wide and revealing a relatively cramped room with 2 bunk beds inside. Here you are, Sentry announced. I do hope it's to your liking. It beats the dirt, I admitted. Thanks. He gave us a nod. Of course. Now rest. Tomorrow will surely be a long day for you. After we had all bundled into the room, he closed the door gently behind us with a click. Taking a closer look at the room, there was a small set of drawers against the wall between the bunk beds. And at the other end of the room, there existed a single window with some basic blinds drawn up. The cloud-covered night sky was visible beyond, though I wasted no time in closing the blinds shut. Right, we need to talk. We do, Stripe agreed. This place. Should ponies wish to live a simple life such as this, I cannot fault them. and yet something about their existence seems uneasy. They're fucking crazy, Cobalt suddenly blurted out. I mean, did you hear what he was saying outside? Equality, 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 I deadpanned in reply. Equality. Celestia's left hoof, Cobalt dismissed. Equality means treating others fairly and giving them the same opportunities as every other person. These ponies have zero opportunity as far as I could see. And it's that mark. I blinked, wondering what the smart pony meant. They're cutie marks? He said it prevents attempts of deviation. Marks like that are not natural, and he mentioned a so-called staff of sameness, too, he explained, pacing back and forth in thought. So the marks are not natural, but magically administered. And if they prevent deviation, then they must be some kind of shackle. If you have the mark and try to do something that they don't want you to do, something bad happens. Yeah, this wasn't sounding any better. Like what? A shock? Death? He suggested. Or maybe it doesn't do anything but alter your brain chemistry. Brainwashing or some kind of suggestion to keep you on track. So you're saying that these ponies don't have any choice in how they live? This was crazy. Even for Equestria. That they're brainwashed from birth into some kind of almost robotic slave? If I'm right, Cobalt confirmed, before adding, or we are massively overthinking this and Sentry is just a weird stallion who is really bad at explaining things. The implications are disturbing, Stripe stated, deep in thought. They have been nothing but hospitable to us, however. Should they remain so, it might be best to simply leave. Is it a good idea to leave them like this? I was totally up for leaving, but still. Stripe shook her head. Maybe not, but maybe so. I cannot say, as this is the only life they have ever known. Should we, for instance, destroy this staff, what would the consequences be? The ponies may panic and have their village destroyed in the process. Nothing may change at all for this generation, at least. So we try to help ponies who may not even want our help, or just leave them to some brainwashed fate forced onto them by some crazy mare named Starlight Glimmer, I summed up, and I really wasn't feeling all that enthused either way. Why the big moral dilemmas? I just wanted a few caps. That's if they remain friendly, Cobalt pointed out. Maybe we should just sleep on it and decide in the morning. That is, if we do the usual guard duty in the meantime. I shall take the first watch, Stripe volunteered, seemingly resisting the urge to bite her lip. I need to dwell on this. Are you okay? I asked in concern. She didn't seem like she was doing too hot. I am fine, Scrap Heap, Stripe assured me with a small smile. It's just... I wish only to make things better for everyone. But here I do not know which course of action is better. Either could doom them. Tell me about it, I groaned, running a hoof down my face. But we'll figure it out, I hope. Stripe sighed, sitting down in a corner with her head leaned against the wall. We shall see, Scrap Heap. We shall see. This was clearly bothering her a great deal. Hell, it was bothering me. I really wanted to think of something more I could say to boost her confidence and spirits, but I couldn't. To be honest, all I could think to do was lay down on the bottom bunk of one of the beds and close my eyes, and hope to Celestia the morning would be better. As some pony began to hastily shake my shoulder, the first thing I immediately noticed was the red swarm in my face. A great many bars lined my EFS from all directions, and very few were green. "Wake up!" Stripe insisted as she increased the severity of her shaking. "Little pony, now is not the time for continued dreams." "What?" I said intelligently as that pretty striped face blurred into my vision. "Stripe, what's happening? What time is it?" "Early sunrise," she answered. And as everything else came into focus, I could see what Cobalt was already up and peering out of the blinds. "I was about to wake you when all this happened." "Sunrise? What happened to changing shifts throughout the night?" "I wouldn't have been able to sleep, and you needed it more," she answered. "But that's not the issue here." I would disagree, but those red bars were pretty convincing. "I'm seeing a lot of movement," I said as I got up onto my hooves. "What's going on?" "I was about to wake you when I heard someone bar the door from the outside," Stripe explained, giving the door a nudge to prove her point. "And it will not move, and I've learnt that the window cannot open normally either. And now the ponies of this town gather around like beasts encircling their prey." Well, shit. This is one way to end the first week of my little quest. So much for their hospitality. "We've gotta leave," I stated the obvious. "Cobalt, what's happening out there?" "It's hard to see, but they're all just standing there," Cobalt informed me. "No idea how long they'll stay like that, though." "Can you teleport us out?" "I've never teleported more ponies than just myself," Cobalt replied. "I'd be able to make it to the outside easily, but bringing 2 others with me might not be a good idea. If I could even manage it." "Well, do we have any other options?" "Breaking the window would just lead to the crowd," Stripe noted. "Breaking the door down would be difficult, and if we are surrounded, the result would be the same no matter." The blue stallion groaned, pinching the bridge of his muzzle between his hooves. But if he was going to do something, he really needed to do it soon. "Cobalt!" "Yes, I'll try it," he responded quickly. "If it's the only way that doesn't involve fighting a mob, I'll try it." And then some pony knocked on the door. We all froze, looking toward the doorway with the exact same expression of confusion. I mean, we're surrounded by a creepy mob of brainwashed cultists, and there's a knock on the door. Go figure. "Well, I guess it's not barred anymore," I said with a sheepish grin. "How many bars are outside?" Stripe asked, looking at my pip-buck. That was a good question, and the answer was a little relieving. "1, I informed her. "I think it's just 1, though it's hard to tell with so many around the building." "Well, do we answer?" Cobalt asked. Well, we couldn't be any less fucked anyway. "Come in." The door opened, and the hooded figure of the prophet calmly trotted in with the staff held at her side. "Oh, a staff. Staff of sameness. I got it."
"Good morning,"
the ghoul greeted cheerfully.
"Oh my, why do you look so tense? I'm sure there aren't any ghosts haunting this room."
Okay. The friendly routine. I had to wonder where this was going. "We're just wondering why there are a whole bunch of ponies outside," I explained as calmly and lightly as my nerves would allow. "Is there some kind of event, or—"
"Event? Oh, I guess you could say that,"
the prophet replied with a chuckle.
"In truth, they are here to see you fine people. It is a cause of celebration, after all."
"And what is the meaning of such a celebration?" Stripe questioned.
"All will be explained soon,"
the prophet promised.
"If you could kindly follow me, I have something important that you just have to see."
Follow? Right. I deadpanned before holding up my pip-buck. Do you know what this is? The prophet examined the pip-buck, giving a small hum.
I'm afraid not. Oh, it's been so long since I've seen the rest of Equestria.
It's a pip-buck, I stated. And it's a useful little thing. Radio, maps, it can detect movement, and tell whether or not that movement is hostile. It was hard to tell with the cloak and all, but the prophet seemed to tense up.
Oh, really? That is interesting.
What's going on here, Starlight? I asked, and the mayor actually gasped, though the moment would have been better if I had a clear view of her face. That is your name, right? Sentry said that this place was started by Starlight Glimmer, who had a staff. You're a ghoul, you clearly lead them, and you have a staff. Even I can put two and two together. The prophet was silent, and not even breathing could be heard coming from the undead mare. But finally she gave a soft chuckle that would send chills down a hellhound's spine, and a single hoof moved the hood down to reveal the rest of her features. The rest of her head was just as tarnished as her muzzle. Very little of her light purple coat remained between the baked and twisted skin. Her eyes were glazed over and lifeless, the remnants of her mane a dark purple with cyan highlights. And through it all, Starlight Glimmer smirked at us with a mixture of malice and amusement.
How very clever. Top marks for you.
Starlight scoffed, twirling the staff in her cyan magical aura.
All right, here's the deal. I've worked very hard to make this village perfect, and I won't have some bumbling outsiders ruin it all.
Perfect? Cobalt blurted out incredulously. Enslaving ponies with fake cutie marks? You expect us to believe that you actually care for these—
Quiet!
Starlight screamed, stopping Cobalt mid-sentence and having his mouth gape like a fish.
Cutie marks have only brought misery to ponies. Their lives are so much better in the existence I have gifted them.
You're crazy. You brainwashed them.
A necessary evil.
She dismissed.
You will understand soon. Join us, live in perfect harmony. Or I can let the mob have you. Either way, you're not leaving our town.
It was then both myself and Stripe drew our weapons. But before I could even enter Sats, a ridiculously strong wave of magic struck us into the back wall. While I was left in a daze, Stripe wasted no time in bringing up her rifle and firing a shot at Starlight, only for the bullet to meet a shield that made Cobalt's look like the work of a beginner.
Now that I cannot allow.
She almost purred, levitating the staff in front of the shield and pointing it at me. I could see magic running down the shaft, coalescing at the forked end of the Staff of Sameness. Fuck that. I entered Sats successfully this time, though the shield made all statistics for hitting Starlight herself nil. Her staff, however, I targeted all available shots on that damned thing and let loose. Okay, now there was the look on her face I was looking for. She couldn't believe it when I brought up my pistol faster than she could launch the spell, and several bullets went flying directly into the staff. One of them missed and shattered uselessly against her shield, but the rest of them all made their mark. The staff was knocked wide, the spell going off and harmlessly smashing through a window. And then the staff shattered, its remnants clattering to the floor as the shock made Starlight stumble and lose her shield. At which point she found Stripe's buck meeting her face. Starlight Glimmer yelped as she was knocked off of her hooves and into the hallway. And at the sound of her pain, you could also hear a sudden rush of ponies coming up the stairs. Time to go. Cobalt! The blue stallion said nothing as he dragged both myself and Stripe toward him with his magic, and then closed his eyes in some seriously deep concentration. His horn glowed with magic, which was then joined by a second layer as the mob burst into the room. And then we were falling. We hit the ground hard, all of us groaning in no small amount of pain as we sat ourselves up. Judging by the hard dirt beneath us, we were definitely outside. The first rays of the sun were breaking through the clouds, the air cool. And a massive group of ponies all stared at us in shock, their bars on the EFS having seemingly reverted to their green state. We had only teleported behind the mob rather than outside the town. Cobalt? I asked quietly, looking towards the stallion to see his nose bleeding and his horn blackened. Horn's burnt out, he muttered. Couldn't get us any further. Oh, right. Of course, the crowd wasn't going to remain in its stupor. Run! The bars returned to red at my shout, and there was suddenly a whole lot of guns and other assorted weaponry pointed right at us. Gunfire riddled around us as we rushed for the gate, one pony getting close to us with a pitchfork. I retrieved my shotgun and unleashed a shell into the pitchfork pony, who fell lifelessly to the ground instantly. And then gunfire was coming from ahead of us, too, and it seemed all the heavily armed and armored ponies for the day had been placed by the gates, sentry among them front and center. They really did not want us to leave. Stripe bit into my barding and pulled me to the side just as a hail of machine gun fire decimated the area. She and Cobalt leading me towards a gap between two houses as they continued to fire at us. As we ducked into the gap, some pony made a go at throwing a Molotov cocktail in our general direction. Too bad all they achieved was torching the house. As the building began to go up in flames, we made it out back and into one of their small gardens of crops. We ducked behind some random machinery I didn't want to guess the function of, and used it for cover, the crazed cultists rushing around the buildings to reach us. Whatever it was large and tucked away in the corner, giving us ample cover and protection against our attackers. The burning house, meanwhile, had gone up extremely quickly, smoke and flames already pouring out of every single gap I could find. A small burst of flames rushed out of one of the windows, catching some of the pursuing ponies as they passed by. I also saw a small figure emerge from the flaming house, screaming as the flames seared its tiny form, and crying for its mama before collapsing into eternal silence. I really wish I hadn't seen that. Damn. More gunfire was striking all around us now, and I had to duck my head down in order to keep it. When I looked toward my companions, I saw they weren't doing so hot. Not only was Cobalt's horn fried, but Stripe was cradling a heavily bleeding foreleg. Shit! Were you shot?
It happened as we were ducking between the buildings,
she explained through gritted teeth.
It went through. I need a healing potion.
Right, I stated as I quickly rummaged through my bags. As I did so, Stripe did her best to return fire toward our attackers, though her aim wasn't its usual precision. I finally retrieved one for her, and she downed it the moment I gave it to her. The wound began to close, and some relief crossed her features.
Thank you.
No problem, I replied, levitating out my pistol and firing at our attackers. I couldn't be sure I was hitting anything, but at least it was keeping them at bay. Stripe chuckled.
I believe the pony saying is that's what friends are for, no?
Friends, huh?
Would you not describe us as friends, Scrap Heap?
she asked sincerely. I didn't answer for a moment, shooting one of the equality ponies in the rear. But once I had a moment to take a breath, I did. Yeah, friends. I'd say so. She gave me an honest smile before returning her focus to the cultists. I have learned to love that sound. I fired off a few more rounds before reloading the pistol and hoofing it over to Cobalt. He gave me a questioning look, but he got the point when I pointed at his ruined horn. As he began to fire at them with my pistol, I brought my shotgun back out and examined our options. The shotgun wasn't good at range, but it would be good if any got too close. Cobalt wasn't so good with the firearm, but fortunately, neither were the cultists. Well, we had warned them about their lack of dedicated guards. And Stripe was keeping them at bay quite effectively, but there were still a lot of them and 3 of us. How long before they stopped fearing our bullets and just rushed us? We could take a lot of them with us, but there was no way we would survive it ourselves. Cobalt couldn't teleport us the rest of the way in his state, and I did not know the spell. The only way out was the front gate, and that was on the other side of the mob. And to think we had considered trying to save these ponies a few hours earlier. But then again, they were brainwashed, all by that starlight glimmer. That mare. Who knew how long she would be out of commission from Stripe's buck? As that powerful unicorn got into the fight, it might have been all over for us. And as it was, we didn't have many options. One pony made a rush at us, and as they got close, I pointed the shotgun and let a blast loose. The pony fell, but the apple-shaped object they had been levitating clattered onward toward us. Grenade! Cobalt shouted in alarm as a small bomb rolled right up next to me. With a shout, I kicked the grenade with my hoof, sending it further behind us and toward the scrap wall. The force of the explosion was like being rammed by a magical force even greater than the one Starlight threw at us, and I could feel several of my ribs shatter from the proximity. The scorching pain coursed through my body as I dropped, instantly reaching for the healing potions in my bags. The whole world was a pained blur, my ears ringing as I downed the sweet liquid and felt my body knitting itself back together. When the world returned to its usual dismal self, I saw Cobalt and Scrap doing much the same. And what was more, the grenade had torn up everything that had been in its immediate proximity, which included making a small hole in the scrap metal wall. And then a pony grabbed me. I felt his teeth bite into my neck as he yanked me from the cover and out into the open, the face of sentries snarling at me with a pistol clenched in his jaws. He didn't say anything, but the rage in his eyes meant he didn't need to. They screamed of murder and death. Namely, my murder and death. This is the stallion who had led us here knowing full well that we'd either be brainwashed by the Prophet or killed trying to resist. Instead, his home was burning and his fellow villagers lay dead all around him. He wanted my blood, and he wanted it bad. So I headbutted him, cringing at the squelching noise that his eye made when my horn dug into it, blood pouring down into my face. He gave a shout of pain as he dropped the gun and fell to the side, whimpering and clutching at his destroyed eye. A bullet or two bit into my barding, though, but didn't go through. The adrenaline pumping through every vein in my body lessened the pain, and I immediately retrieved my own gun to fire back, scattering several of the charging and inexperienced ponies. Ponies further away continued to lay down fire, and I slipped back behind the machinery we were using for cover. Go! I shouted to Stripe and Cobalt, and I retrieved my pistol before firing more shots into the crowd. As Cobalt and then Stripe made it through the gap, I took note of our town. The fire had spread between buildings, and many of the residents were dead were dying around us. We were hardly soldiers, but these ponies had been even less so, clueless beyond simple mob mentality. Now their home was burning around them, and Starlight Glimmer's perfect society was clearly doomed. I hadn't wanted it to be this way. Damn them, they didn't need to attack us like that! We hadn't wanted to destroy their home. We only wished for a place to stay for the night. These ponies, generations of enslavement, to the point of knowing nothing else, just didn't care. Stripe had just made it through the gap when Sentry jumped me again, almost feral as he tried to pummel me with his hooves. We struggled on the ground, him punching me in the horn when I tried to take the second eye, and me trying to keep him from tearing my throat out with his teeth. Worse still, with no pony laying down fire, the cultists were beginning to get brave again, and made a run around the sides of the machinery. With Sentry still on top of me, a group of 3 cultists in scrap armor ran up to us and pointed their hunting rifles at my struggling self. So I rolled. 3 bangs echoed, and Sentry gave a shout of pain as each went through his makeshift armor and bit into his back. He went still as I levitated his saddlebags away along with my guns, standing quickly back up on my hooves as the 3 ponies stood in shock at Sentry's death. But I couldn't dwell on that. Though the remaining cultists would be swarming around me any second, and there would be nothing I could do to save myself. I rushed through the gap as fast as my legs would carry me. I slipped through, leaving the burning hulk of the dead village behind me, as the remaining cultists scrambled amongst themselves. I only barely registered the slight tink of metal hitting the ground after me, and the panicked look on the faces of Stripe and Cobalt, before a loud bang assaulted my senses. And then everything went dark.